Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTubers. Jerry Diamond, reading the Chronicles of Narnia, Book 4, The Silver Chair, Book 4, and some of the editions. Anyway, I just on the other day, I was wearing this sweater the other night, so I thought I'd wear it again tonight. That icon, that insignia, is for tuning elements. That's two tuning elements bedded together. That's the was the insignia that icon that I came up with for the business that I started with my business partner, Sean Martinez. And like I said, this hat that I'm wearing is a silver blocking. It's an EMF blocking hat. There are two things you can do. You can either shroud yourself, protect yourself from EMF, or you can transmute the energy from EMF. You can change it into a better energy, and that's what the tuning element does. That by grounding you to the earth energy, the earth frequency, the Schumann resonances, it transmutes the bad energy into good energy. Basically, creates a force field around you, in a sense. So, that's what it does. And you can muscle test them or whatever. Even this bracelet, as old as it is, 10 years old, I succussed it. I put that energy into my grandson's watch and some coins, 2 quarters. I put it into the quarter, so it did the same thing for him as it was doing for me. Okay, anyway, that's enough of that. All I'm saying is that this could have been a advertiser, a sponsor of my work, the hat here, because, like I said, HAVN, formerly HAVN, whatever that stood for, I don't know. Lambs, LAMBS, like lamb, plural, lambs. They make a silver fabric that is, they buy the fabric, they make the hat, and then they sell the hat. But anyway, they wanted it was going to cost me $70 for this hat. I bought it from Faraday Labs, which is a lot cheaper. Same fabric, they buy from the same source, same stuff. They said, we've just spent millions of dollars on research. Nah, that's the same bullshit my partner gave me, No, sorry, that dog don't fly. That dog don't hunt. That pig don't fly. Don't lie to me. Anyway, my partner could still be my partner. I call this my $10,000 hat, my $10,000 bracelet, my $15,000 sweater, That's all I got from him. Took my lifetime of research and used it. Used me and chewed me up and spit me out. Anyway, sorry about that. Water under the bridge, I don't really care. I will bless him that bless thee and curse him that curse thee. So that's where it's at. Alright, so we're on chapter 14. I'm going to read part of chapter 13, the end of it, just because that's what I've been doing. So they found out that they killed the queen, the serpent, the green serpent, the green queen, the green witch, and they captured one of the little earthmen. His name is Golg, G-O-L-G, Golg. Oh, please, your honors, please, kind gentleman, whimpered the gnome, promise you will not tell the Queen's Grace anything I say. The Queen's Grace, as you call her, said the prince sternly, is dead. I killed her myself. What? Cried the gnome, opening its ridiculous mouth wider and wider in astonishment. Dead? The witch dead, and by your honor's hand? He gave a huge sigh of relief and added, why, then your honor is a friend. The prince withdrew his sword an inch or so. Puddleglum let the creature sit up. He looked round on the 4 travelers with its twinkling red eyes, chuckled once or twice, and began. My name is Golg, said the gnome, and I'll tell you, your honors, all I know. About an hour ago, we were all going about our work, her work, I should say, sad and silent, same as we've done any other day for years and years. Then there came a great crash and a bang, and as soon as they heard it, everyone says to himself, I haven't had a song or a dance or let out a squib, a firecracker, for a long time. Why is that? And everyone thinks to himself, why, I must have been enchanted. And then everyone says to himself, I'm blessed if I know why I'm carrying this load, and I'm not going to carry it any farther, and that's that. And down we all throw our sacks and bundles and tools, and everyone turns and sees the great red glow over yonder, and everyone says to himself, what's that? And everyone answers himself and says, there's a crack or chasm split wide open, a nice warm glow coming up through it from the really deep land, 1,000 fathoms under us. Great Scott, exclaimed Eustace, are there other lands still lower down? Oh, yes, your honor, said Golg. Lovely places, what we call the land of Bism. This country where we are now, the witch's country, is what we call the shallow lands. It's a good deal too near the surface to suit us. Ugh, you might almost be living outside on the surface itself. You see, we're all poor gnomes from Bism, whom the witch has called up here by magic to work for her. But we'd forgotten all about it until that crash came and the spell broke. We didn't know who we were or where we belonged. We couldn't do anything or think anything except what she put into our heads. Sorry. Pardon me. Gloomy things she put there all those years. I've nearly forgotten how to make a joke or dance a jig or light a firecracker. The moment the bang came and the chasm opened and the sea began rising, it all came back. And of course, we all were off as quick as we could to get down the crack and home to our own place. And you could see them over there all letting off rockets and standing on their heads for joy. And I'll be very obliged to your honors if you soon let me go and join them. I think this is simply splendid, said Jill. I'm so glad we freed the gnomes, as well as ourselves when we cut off the witch's head. And I'm so glad they aren't really horrid and gloomy any more than the prince really was, well, what he seemed like. That's all very well, Pole, said Puddleglum cautiously, but those gnomes didn't look to me like chaps who were just running away. They looked more like military formations, if you ask me. Do you look me in the face, Mr. Gulg, and tell me you weren't preparing for battle? Of course you were, your honor, said Gulg. You see, we didn't know the witch was dead. We thought she'd be watching from the castle. We were trying to slip away without being seen, and then when you three came out with swords and horses, of course everyone said to himself, here it comes, not knowing that his honor wasn't on the witch's side. And we were determined to fight like anything rather than give up the hope of going back to Bism. I'll be sworn 'tis an honest gnome, said the prince. Let go of it, Puddleglum. As for me, good Gulg, I haven't been enchanted like you and your fellows, and have but newly remembered myself. And now, one question more. Do you know the way to those new diggings by which the sorceress meant to lead an army against Overland? Squealed Gulg. Yes, I know that terrible road. I will show you where it begins, but it is no matter of use, your honor, asking me to go with you on it. I'll die, rather. Why? Asked Eustace anxiously. What's so dreadful about it? Too near the top, the outside, said Gulg, shuddering. That was the worst thing the witch did to us, who were going to be led out into the open onto the outside of the world. They say there's no roof at all there, only a horrible great emptiness called the sky, and the diggings have gone so far that a few strokes of the pick would bring you out to it. I wouldn't dare go near them. Hurrah, now you're talking, cried Eustace and Jill. And Jill said, but it's not horrid at all up there. We like it. We live there. I know you overlanders live there, said Gulg, but I thought it was because you couldn't find your way down inside. You can't really like it, crawling about like flies on top of the world. What about showing us the road at once, said Puddleglum. In a good hour, cried the prince. The whole party set out. The prince remounted his charger, Puddleglum climbed up behind Jill, and Gulg led the way. As he went, he kept shouting out the good news that the witch was dead and that the four overlanders were not dangerous. And those who heard him shouted it on to others, and so in only a few minutes the whole of Underland was ringing with the shouts and cheers, and gnomes by the hundreds and thousands, leaping, turning cartwheels, standing on their heads, playing leapfrog, letting off all kinds of huge firecrackers and rockets. And they came pressing around Coal Black and Snowflake. And the prince had to tell the story of his own enchantment and deliverance at least 10 times. In this way they came to the edge of the chasm. It was about 1,000 feet long and perhaps 200 feet wide. They dismounted from their horses and came to the edge and looked down into it. A strong heat smote up into their faces, mixed with a smell which was quite unlike anything they had ever smelled. It was rich, sharp, exciting, and made you sneeze. The depth of the chasm was so bright that it at first dazzled the eyes, and they could see nothing. When they got used to it, they thought they could make out a river of fire. And on the banks of that river, there seemed to be fields and groves of an unbearable hot brilliance, although they were dim compared with the river. There were blues, reds, greens, and whites all jumbled together. A very good stained glass window with the tropical sun staring straight through it at midday might have something the same effect. Down the rugged sides of the chasm, looking black like flies against all that fiery light, hundreds of earthmen were descending. Your honor, said Gulg, and when they turned to look at him, they could see nothing but blackness for a few minutes. Their eyes were so dazzled. Your honors, why don't you come down to Bism? You'd be happier there than in that cold, unprotected, naked country out on top. Or at least come down for a short visit. Jill took it for granted that none of the others would listen to such an idea for a moment. To her horror, she heard the prince saying, Truly, friend Gulg, I have half a mind to come down with you, For this is a marvelous adventure, and it may be no mortal man has ever looked into Bism before, or ever will have the chance to again. And I know not how, as the years pass, I shall bear to remember that it was once in my power to have probed the uttermost pit of earth that I forbore. But how could a man live there? You do not swim into the fire itself? Oh no, your honor, no, it's only salamanders live in the fire itself. What kind of beast is your salamander? Asked the prince. It's hard to tell their kind, your honor, but they are too white hot to look at. But they are most like small dragons. They speak to us out of the fire. They are wonderfully clever with their tongues, very witty and eloquent. Jill glanced hastily at Eustace. She had felt sure that he would like the idea of sliding down that chasm even less than she did, but her heart sank as she saw his face was quite changed. He looked much more like the prince than he did the old scrub at Experiment House, for all his adventures and the days he had sailed with King Caspian were coming back to him. Your Highness, he said, if my old friend Repeat Sheep the Mouse were here, he would say we could not now refuse this adventure of Bism without a great impeachment to our honor. Down there, said Golg, I could show you real gold, real silver, real diamonds. Bosh, said Jill rudely, as if we didn't know that we're below the deepest mines even here. Yes, said Golg, I have heard of those little scratches in the crust that you top dwellers call mines. But that's where you get dead gold, dead silver, dead gems. Down in Bism we have them alive and growing. There I'll pick you bunches of rubies that you can eat and squeeze you a cupful of diamond juice. You won't care much about fingering the cold, dead treasures of your shallow mines after you have tasted the live ones of Bism. My father went to the world's end, said Rillian thoughtfully. It would be a marvelous thing if his son went to the bottom of the world. If your Highness wants to see your father while he's still alive, I think he'd prefer, said Petalglum. It's about time we were getting onto that road to the diggings. And I won't go down to that hole, whatever anyone says, said Jill. Why, if your honors are really set to go back to the other world, said Golg, there is one bit of a road that's rather lower than this, and perhaps with that flood still rising. Oh, do come on, begged Jill. I fear it must be so, said the prince with a deep sigh. But I have left half of my heart in the land of Bism. Please, begged Jill. Where is the road? Asked Petalglum. There are lamps all the way, said Golg. Your honor can see the beginning of the road on the far side of the chasm. How long will the lamps burn for? Asked Petalglum. At that moment a hissing, scorching voice like the voice of fire itself, they wondered afterwards if it could have been a salamander's, came whistling up out of the very depths of Bism. Quick, 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 to the cliffs, to the cliffs, to the cliffs, it said. The rift closes, it closes, it closes. Quick, quick, quick. At the same time, with ear-shattering cracks and creaks, the rocks moved. Already, while they looked, the chasm was narrower. From every side, the belated gnomes were rushing into it. They would not wait to climb down the rocks. They flung themselves headlong, and either because so strong a blast of hot air was beating up from the bottom, or for some other reason, they could be seen floating downwards like leaves. Thicker and thicker they floated, till their blackness almost blotted out the fiery river and the groves of live gems. Goodbye, your honors, I'm off, shouted Golg, and dived. Only a few were left to follow him. The chasm was now no broader than a stream, and it was narrow as a slit in a pillar box. Now it was only an intensely bright thread. Then, with a shock like 1,000 freight trains crashing into 1,000 pairs of buffers, the lips of rocks closed. The hot and maddening smell vanished. The travelers were alone in an underworld which now looked far blacker than before. Pale, dim, and dreary, the lamps marked the direction of the road. Now, said Petalglum, it's 10 to 1 we've already stayed too long, but we may as well make a try. Those lamps will give out in 5 minutes, I shouldn't wonder. They urged the horses to a canter and thundered along the dusky road in fine style, but almost at once it began going downhill. They would have thought Golg had sent them the wrong way if they had not seen, on the other side of the valley, the lamps going on and upward as far as the eye could reach. But at the bottom of the valley the lamps shone on moving water. Haste, cried the prince. They galloped down the slope. It would have been nasty enough at the bottom even 5 minutes later, for the tide was running up the valley like a mill race. And if it had come to swimming, the horses could hardly have won over. But it was still only a foot or two deep, and though it swished terribly round the horses' legs, they reached the far side in safety. Then they began the long, slow, whirring march uphill, with nothing ahead to look at but the pale lamps which went up and up as far as the eye could reach. When they looked back, they could see the wide water spreading. All the hills of Underland were now islands, and it was only on those islands that the lamps remained. Every moment some distant light vanished. Soon there would be total darkness everywhere except on the road they were following, and even on the lower part of it behind them, Though no lamps had yet gone out, the lamp light shone on water. Although they had good reason for hurrying, the horses could not go on forever without a rest. So they halted, and in silence they could hear the lapping of water. "I wonder what's his name. Father Time flooded out now," said Jill, "and all those queer sleeping animals." "I don't think we're as high as that," said Eustace. "Don't you remember how we had to go downhill to reach the sunless sea? I shouldn't think the water has reached Father Time's cave yet." "That's as may be," said Pilgrim. "I'm more interested in the lamps on the road. This road. Look a bit sickly, don't they?" "They always did," said Jill. "Ah," said Pilgrim, "but they're greener now." "You don't mean to say they're going out?" cried Eustace. "Well, however they work, you can't expect them to last forever, you know," replied the Marsh Wiggle. "But don't let your spirits down, Scrub. I've got my eye on the water too, and I don't think it's rising as fast as it did." "Small comfort, my friend," said the Prince, "if we cannot find our way out. I cry your mercy, all. I am to blame for my pride and fantasy, which delayed us by the mouth of the land of Bism. Now let us ride on." During the hour or so that followed, Jill sometimes thought Puddleglum was right about the lamps, and sometimes thought it was only her own imaginations. Meanwhile, the land was changing. The roof of Underland was so near that even by the dull light they could now see it quite distinctly, and the great rugged walls of Underland could be seen drawing closer on each side. The road, in fact, was leading them up into a steep tunnel. They began to pass picks and shovels and barrows and other signs that the diggers had recently been at work. If only one could be sure of getting out, all this was very cheering. But the thought of going on into that hole that would get narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower and harder to turn the rack in was very unpleasant. At last the roof was so low that Puddleglum and the Prince knocked their heads against it. The party dismounted and led the horses. The road was uneven here, and one had to pick one's steps with some care. That was how Jill noticed the growing darkness. There was no doubt about it now. The faces of the others looked strange and ghastly in the green glow. Then all at once, she couldn't help it. Jill gave out a little scream. One light, the next one ahead, went out altogether. The one behind them also did the same. Then they were in absolute darkness. "Courage, friends," came Prince Aurelian's voice. "Whether we live or die, Aslan will be our good lord." "That's right, sir," said Puddleglum's voice, "and you must always remember there's one good thing about being trapped down here. It'll save funeral expenses." Jill held her tongue. "If you don't want other people to know how frightened you are, this is always a wise thing to do. It's your voice that gives you away." "We might as well go on and stand here," said Eustace, and when she heard the tremble in his voice, Jill knew how wise she'd been not to trust her own. Puddleglum and Eustace went first with their arms stretched out and head in front of them, for fear of blundering into anything. Jill and the Prince followed, leading the horses. "I say," came Eustace's voice much later, "are my eyes going queer, or is there a patch of light up ahead?" Before anyone could answer them, Puddleglum called out, "Stop, I'm against a dead end, and it's earth, not rock." "What were you saying, Scrub?" "By the line," said Prince. "Eustace is right, there is a sort of... But it's not daylight," said Jill. "It's only a cold blue sort of light." "Better than nothing, though," said Eustace. "Can we get up to it?" "It's not right overhead," said Puddleglum. "It's above us, but it's also in this wall that I run into. How would it be, Pole, if you got on my shoulders and saw whether I could get you up to it?" There you go. Next chapter is titled The Disappearance of Jill. Okay, that was chapter 14. I'll read 15 maybe in a little while. Or maybe when I go live at 8. Okay?